like to welcome you all to Taller Boricua, to this event. My name is Marcos Dimas. I'm Executive Director of the Puerto Rican Workshop. Before I go on, I'd like to thank our funders, the New York State Department of Cultural Affairs. Hello, please sit down. The New York State Council on the Arts, the New York City Department of Youth Community Services, the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, and the Puerto Rican Workshop Incorporated. Those are our founders. We also we've been Taller Boricua founded in 1969 and became a not-for-profit organization in 1970. We reached our 52nd year anniversary, and this is our space. We're primarily a contemporary art organization, and we feature basically Latino art, but we also inclusive because we are a contemporary art organization. We're not a nationalistic organization. We're a contemporary art organization. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Nitza Tufiño, who curated and organized the exhibition Evolution Revolution. And I'll pass it over to her and she'll take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcos. Hello and welcome to the gallery. I'm just going to say some quick words. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. I want to welcome everyone to our artist talk of this extraordinary exhibition, Evolution Revolution, that kicks off of the early Centennial celebration of the New York Society of Women Artists, founded in 1925. Natalia Giugni, who is responsible for spearheading this event and asked that I curate the show. It has been both humble for me and as an artist and curate to have been given the confidence to allow me to visualize the spirit of birth of evolution and revolution at the gallery walls of Galeria de Taller Boricua. Some questions that will be highlighted are: what is the inspiration or the focus of your piece? How do you use your art form as a piece, as a weapon of social change and equality? Do you believe that art is eternal, and why? I want fellow artist Natalie to now introduce the artists in the show and who are present, and we hope to have a surprise for the society throughout the filming of the talk. Thank you again for your attendance and support, and now Natalie Giugni will take over. But before that, I want to say that I was able to get Robert Rodriguez, who was the assemblyman for our district and who's been a big supporter of El Taller Boricua, to give you, to the New York woman artists, a proclamation with the history of your doings through the 100 years. He couldn't be here today. The governor of New York, Kukul, couldn't be here today. But Robert sent a video, small video, maybe a few minutes. We're going to put it on so you could listen to it. And during the weeks in the proclama, it's taking us like 4 months, Natalie, and I writing it. So during the week we'll get it, and then we're going to photograph it and put it in the website, but it will be given to you at another date. So you can celebrate with some wine and stuff like that. So Willie, can you turn? It was only fair that you got at least a proclamation for all your work of all those years, and as women and fighters for all the vote, abortion rights, all the women's rights, civil rights, that you should get that proclama, and that it gets put in the state as giving a date of your celebration. Let's listen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Secretary of State Robert Rodriguez, and I'm honored to be here to say a few words as you celebrate an evening full of history and culture. Growing up in and representing East Harlem El Barrio in the Assembly, I've always known Taller Boricua to be a very special place, a welcoming beacon for artists, and a true presence in the Puerto Rican community. And over the years, your organization has been advocating on behalf of artists and residents, making sure that their voices are heard and they have a place to be seen. Because, as we all know, art in its many forms has the power to influence, to educate, to inspire, to anger, or to calm, or frankly, just to transform. And this meaningful exhibit by the New York Society of Women Artists speaks to all of those emotions as it highlights the role of women in American history. In highlighting the struggles women have faced throughout history and championing their successes, it serves as a reminder that our work is not done. And as a husband and a father of a young daughter, I've spent my life fighting for women's equality, equal pay, and equal access to health care and education. This wonderful collaboration between Taller Boricua and the New York Society of Women Artists keeps the dialogue of women's issues on the forefront. So congratulations on a thought-provoking exhibit. And to the New York Society of Women Artists, congratulations on approaching your centennial year. 100 years of recognizing and nurturing individuals with diverse backgrounds and experiences. It's truly a great accomplishment. So thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be here with you, to say a few words, and to really be a part of this wonderful celebration. Thank you.
So now we pass it over to Natalie.
Wow, that was really lovely. Thank you so much for organizing that. And so many thanks to Taller Boricua for hosting us in this lovely space. And thank you very much, Nitza, for spearheading, for reaching out to the Office of the Governor to validate us with the proclamation that will be given. It really is an honor. And thank you for always supporting women in the arts and our group. You've been... So our group, the New York Society of Women Artists, was founded in 1925, and it started with a group of 23 feisty suffragettes who banded together to rally for equal opportunities within the art world. And this particular show, Evolution Revolution, touches upon our 100th year centennial and also brings up the fact that we are, where we're occupying a very different contemporary world, women today are still fighting for same equalities. The right to vote is being slowly taken away, and female autonomy is another issue, So Evolution Revolution is the collective voices of 45 artists in this show through 54 pieces, and singularly and collectively they are making a statement about how many times do we need to fight these same fights. It's over and over. We can't ever get too comfortable, because gains that we make today could be taken away tomorrow. And we see this very much in the recent overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I'm just going to call out Barbara Aram's piece, which is the sculpture in the corner, Blue Woman. That piece she initially made when Roe versus Wade passed. And the sculpture is a female form, and the chain used to be around the neck. And then once Roe versus Wade was passed, she took the chain off the neck, and the figure is now holding it. So in everybody's individual voice, they are responding to that, to the, ever fight for equality and just within the art world and within the world that we occupy. And on that note, I am going to pass the baton over to Geraldine Juranek. Oh, let me introduce, actually, right before you start, Geraldine, I just wanted to mention everybody's name. We have Geraldine Juranek speaking, Sheila Kremelman, Sienna Gilan Porta, Ellen Alt, and Fran Beeler, who will all be speaking today. Okay, here you go. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's no line on this. Not good. So, good afternoon. Don't forget the avant-garde was new for male artists of New York in the 22. And the artists that our group were influenced by were the European artists of the avant-garde. So, we use these words, European artists, avant-garde. It all sounds so set in stone, right? But who were these artists? They were guys who'd gone to World War I as ambulance drivers and come back wrecked and never the same again. Their work changed. They were, in Italy, they were people like the Curator and his crew, his group around the metaphysical artists, and they met, guess where? In the mental wards of the army. They were broken down by the war, and they met and talked in the hospital, where they formed a plan for a magazine, and that's where metaphysical art was born. So these were hard times, broken times. Okay, so what happened in this time? The vote for women was new. Urban culture was new. We were just out of World War I and the plague of, 18 or 19 to 20, 21, something like that. We had just gained international standing as a country. All of this was in its infancy. So in coming together in our group, we were inspired by the freedom to be creative in new art movements of Europe, because in the past we'd been in a professional arts group that was very conservative and honing their portrait skills and landscape skills and things for building, for architecture. Okay, so in New York, women artists showed a sense of honor, awe, and courage in the will to work together for the sake of each member's individual creativity, and over time changing to remain seminal to the urgent needs of women in art. Even though there were obstacles, lost records, we can't find a lot of our records. There was World War II. There was the Depression. During all this, New York society women continued to pursue art, and other women flew planes and riveted steel. The 20th century is a journey of development for individual women and their movements. And this is this is what I said in the catalog for the show. I'm going to read that now. It seems to me that evolution occurs in anthropological time and revolution in historical time. Revolution is a local ripple, a short-term adjustment, a stitch here, a pearl there, a rivulet in nature. A line from an old movie paraphrased, a woman's life flows like a river, a man's life is all bumps, something like that. You might remember the movie, I couldn't quite remember. Women's lives seem now to be at the flood. We're riding the surge, it is good, and we will meet downstream. I'm going to tell you a little bit about an art historian that I'm going to quote from. I'm going to just give you two short quotes, but I'd like to tell you something about him. I'm going to tell you about friendship through time. We're a 100-year-old organization, after all. Starting by reading a quote by my best friend in time, Jacob Burckhardt. He is a prophet of history. After a couple of successful books, he decided to stop writing, only for the rest of his life sharing the experience directly, much as we are doing today. He lived and taught in a small city in a small country, Basel, Switzerland, in the 19th century, though, so it's quite a long time ago. He taught at the university, in the high school, and he gave public lectures to the town's citizens. Yet, he became the father of modern history and of art history, his students formulating programs based on his clear studies from Greek society. He organized according to how society was led by religion or by politics or by culture. And so it gave them a very clear scaffolding. This was a staging that allowed him to see into our 20th and 21st century with amazing and prophetic accuracy. So just a short quote. If history is to help us in any way to solve the great and difficult riddle of life, in even the slightest degree, then we must look back from the areas of individual and social anxieties to a land where our vision is not immediately clouded by egotism. Perhaps with quieter contemplation, at greater distance, there will arise an intimation of the true character of our earthly pilgrimage. In his time, he considered other historians' writing to be, for the most part, political journalism. I consider most in my own time to be the same. To live in our own time only is to, at best, be a revolutionist, or simply a careless citizen, never knowing whether we are reforming or destroying, referencing only partisan issues. Okay, not everyone has time these days for a reflective life, but it still must be understood that we need each person, even amateurs, to know that it is necessary to be reflective. We depend and always have and always will depend on those who shun the ordinary group goals, a need for reflection, and a need for individual clarity. And here comes his second quote, and then the quotes will be over. We are only concerned here with such minds and hearts as cannot fall victim to common boredom, which can carry through a train of thought, and have imagination enough to be able to do without the concrete imaginings of others, or, if they do turn to them, are not enslaved, but can keep their own integrity. So I'm going to read a little now from, keeping track of myself, a little stream of consciousness for fun. My casa non è su casa, huh? Your politician is not my politician. Oh. Twitter is not my universe. A greater number of disenfranchised people does not render sovereignty useless. I value my experience as representative of human experience. My phone is not smart, and hyperbole does not charm me into having to have one. I live in the present with friends, teachers, and guides from the past, always available at the opening of a book. My goal as the artist of the painting in the show is to evoke and evolve the position of women as keepers of wisdom. Here, the statue of Athena represents the goddess of wisdom in Greek culture, as does the archaic fertility figure from prehistory. And the face in the mirror is the painter of our present day. Now that's three figures in my painting, so I'm describing. There's Athena, there's the figure from our prehistory, and the present painter. I, the painter, see in time, looking out at my viewer, you, and back to origins, them, my two figures, while all the figures, the three of us, look out at the viewer, who extends the seeing experience. So it's this round and around. I hope to provide a ride of hope through time of the beauty and the grandeur which has cost us all our love. I'd like to close with a little paragraph. In closing, I want to say that I am a much happier person for having association with artists and thinkers from other times. My mind holds better. The connections become real, immediate, and useful. Current events are endured and assessed by me with less fear, obstinacy, or loneliness. Yes, these are friends I will never lose, unlike those in the lived life in the changing world. Thank you.
That was lovely. Thank you, Geraldine. Will you need that, Sheila?
No.
Okay. Hello, Sheila Kremelman. Why don't you?
I don't think I need this either. So, yeah, my name is Sheila Krummelman, and my work is in Gallery 123. The second, as soon as you walk into the room, on the right, and it is called Through a Glass Darkly. So before I talk about the inspiration for the work, I really want to acknowledge all of the work, the time and the energy and the work and the effort that Nitza and Natalia have put into this magnificent show. It is, it's absolutely magnificent and powerful. And as a curator and, you know, as our, she doesn't like this word, but fearless leader, they've worked in concert for 3 months to keep the show alive. Natalie was in this wonderful interview. I've had first time in my life I do have some notes. The Art Settlers of New York on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Natalie was interviewed by Ronnie Bellini, and is Ronnie here? Where's Ronnie? Hi. It was wonderful, and one of the things that she did in the interview was she talked ever so. Didn't spend that much time, but mine was one of the few pieces that she talked about, and she got it. and in fact, there was something about it, about the leaflet in the left pocket that I thought, whoa, okay. So it's a figurative abstraction. It's a multimedia piece. It's called Through a Glass Darkly, and so you know it's not literal. There's a lot of it's a mixed media piece, acrylic and mixed media, and so there's a lot of materials collaged, including a shattered mirror on the piece, and so I'm a process painter, whether I'm working in abstraction or I'm working figuratively or painting tropical florals. I really don't know what the thing's going to look like until I finish, and I was like, whoa, there's there's something I never noticed about this painting. There's a leaflet in her back pocket. But what this says about Natalie is that she knows about every single painting in the show. She knows about the artist. She knows about the content. She even picks up new content for me. And it is an amazing thing that she does, because it's a huge show. It's a magnificent space, and it was curated magnificently, and I want to thank both of you. I've been a member since 1991. This is the first time, I think we've had 3 months. Diana can correct me if I'm wrong, and this is a magnificent space. It's one of the largest spaces that we've had the privilege of exhibiting in, so it's really an honor to be part of the show. So it is, I actually looked it up. I know Geraldine did some research, and so for the first time ever. The title comes from a gospel of not one of my favorite apostles, but Paul. And it's the one about love, and it's beautiful. And I read it, and wow, really wonderful. And it took me back to, I went to a missionary school, K through 8, in the Hawaiian Islands, and it took me back to that. Notre Dame nuns, very no priest. But the end of it is, and now faith, hope, and love abide. Those 3, but the greatest is love. And so this is all about not seeing clearly, not seeing clearly. Looking into the future. In the painting, the figure in the painting is my granddaughter. So evolution, revolution, it exists at 2 levels. On a very personal level, which Natalie talked about, but also as an activist, the evolution, I hope we're evolving, but during the last couple of years, I thought maybe we're devolving. And I hate labels, but I guess I would be a first wave feminist. And I was an activist. I was an activist 60s, 70s, and the 80s. In the 90s, I don't consider myself an activist artist, but I was engaged in a 5-year Holocaust project. And so, in retrospect, yeah, I guess that was, activist work. And as a college professor, teaching the Holocaust, not taught the Holocaust in grade school, middle school, junior high, or high school by using my own work. So I was part of the Stop the War in Vietnam movement. My husband was reactivated in 1968. He was in Vietnam. I was at home protesting the war. As an aside, he went over as a hawk. He came back a dove. I speak for myself, of course, and civil rights, and women's rights, and gay rights, and the rights of the elderly. And so I was very much involved as an activist, and women's rights. I painted a painting, something came to my mind, and I was thinking about this show and our group. And Women's Lib, the term Women's Lib, Women's Liberation, wasn't even coined until 1972. And I painted a painting called Damn the Male Chauvinist Pig in 1970. And I am not that angry anymore. And we are not. And what occurred to me when the collectors in St. Louis, she still tells me she still has it hanging, is this group originally, as has just been stated, was an avant-garde group of women artists. There were 3 others, Soho 20 series and something else, but we were considered an avant-garde group. And so we were and we are, but we're not militant. And I participated in every show since 1991, except for one summer I was out of town and I couldn't. But the work, the craftsmanship, the facility with medium, the level of expertise in this group. And I belong to another women's artist co-op, and I used to belong to, all kinds of co-ops, and just two now. But this one is special to me, and because we're small, because we're intimate, we know each other. But mostly the level of expertise, of professionalism, and it's astounding because the shows are always eclectic, but they always work with the theme. So I wanted to say that about the group. There's a lot of love in this show. Evolution, revolution. There's a lot of beauty. There is a lot of experimentation. So as artists in this group, we have evolved. We have evolved, and so there's a show downtown in near South Street Seaport, and militant feminists, and the work is so, and I was, as a young woman, full of rage and revolution, and I went through an AMAB period, all men are bastards period, and we can express how we feel about how we passionately need for things to change in our group without being offensive and without being militant, and without stepping on people's toes. And, we still get the message. So my granddaughter was born with a congenital brain disorder. And so she's 26 now, and she's handicapped. She's visually impaired, and she's handicapped. But intellectually, she's 100%. She was recently accepted into Hunter's School of Social. And so that is the figure in my painting. And I watched her evolve, and she is my muse. She is my model, my teacher. When I have days where I'm down and I'm feeling sorry for myself, I think of what this she's a young woman now, has gone through multiple high-risk brain surgery, and so she that's who the figure is. And I work in series, and I work sometimes three at the same time. And I took photographs of her when she was 13, when she was 16, 19, and when she was 25. And that's 25. And so because of evolution, revolution, so I resurrected a photograph, and I started painting. And what I had in mind consciously was giving witness to her involvement in Occupy Wall Street, when she sometimes needed a walker, and most of the time when she was at rallies or at marches, somebody in the family would go with her, and she was passionately involved in Occupy Wall Street. So that was the kind of, and it evolved into all of a sudden I put a square, and it felt like she was walking up steps and then looking through a window, hence the title, Through a Glass Dark. Our whole family, we are a family of activists. As Natalie expressed in the interview, I passed the baton on to my daughter and my granddaughter. And so, that tradition of giving witness to change and rallies and protests, and it has continued. So I do it in my work now, but she's still out on the streets. So I'm going to read this. It says a lot about this was originally, I had a lot, like a whole page statement for the loop, and then we were told to pare it down to a couple of sentences. So I have passed my activist baton to my granddaughter. While I still paint the paintings, she attends the rallies, the protests, the marches. So does my daughter. Through a Glass Darkly is about my granddaughter's involvement in the Occupy Wall Street movement in New York City. She was 16 then. That began in Zuccotti Park in 2011. The park is near Wall Street and a 10-minute walk from her home. They live in Battery Park City. And they were there during 9/11 too. Hundreds of mostly young people gathered together that fall to protest against economic inequality, the gross inequities between the very rich and the very poor in New York City. They were also protesting against how billionaires, here comes the anger, and corporations used their money. She and her friends realized that although we are the richest nation in the world, we fail to properly house, feed, eat, and humanely treat so many of our own people in this city. And the almost biblical clash between the dismissive habit, the all-powerful materialist class that sounds like the, 60s, that has colonized both of our downtown neighborhoods. I live in Soho, they live in Battery Park City. And I moved in 89, and boy, has it changed. The movement became nationwide and eventually global. She was 16 at the time. She is the figure in the painting. She is my model and my muse. And she's 25, and she still carries on, and she's still my teacher and my muse. That's it. Let's keep fighting the good fight. We have to keep fighting.
Thank you, Sheila. So I'd like to introduce Sienna Gilan Porta.
Okay. I wrote, is this thing working? What? Okay. I also wrote this out, but I'm going to need to use this. Yeah. I have never written anything out before. I'm a former professor and I'm used to speaking extemporaneously, but I needed to do this. Okay. My name is Sienna Gilan Porta, and the reason I use such a long name is because if you look me up on the internet, you will get all those beautiful hotels in Tuscany. So, I used to be Sienna Porta. I am now Sienna Gilan Porta on the web. I want to mention my early years and my family. It's personal, and I really owe them a lot. I'm a native New Yorker born in Manhattan. The artist parents who had to move from West 64th Street because they were building Lincoln Center. I don't know if anybody here is that old, but yeah. It was a big deal. 18 blocks taken by eminent domain. And it was a nice neighborhood. Anyway, we moved to Rockland County, the suburbs, when I was 4.5. And though it was beautiful, I really missed the city, so I moved back with friends. 10 years later, quit high school, attended the Art Students League, and had a lot of really entry-level jobs. We'll leave it at that. My family dynamics were exciting, loving, dramatic. My brilliant younger brother, David, though, was diagnosed with a personality disorder. And if any of you have had to deal with that, I'm sure in your family, that's very difficult. One of the reasons I left home. My father suffered from PTSD. He served 3.5 years in World War II. He was a painter, a successful textile designer in a very competitive world. And he tried to organize the Textile Designers Union because he came from a family of organizers. But it's like trying to herd cats. You really can't do it. My mom, multi-talented, Barbara, she had gone to art school, was hoping for a job in the arts when she came to New York. But it was World War II, and most of the jobs were given to guys. So she became an activist and a photographer, a teacher, and she served as the first Rockland County Environmental Director. And I would say that our family motto was always ask questions. So I took my high school equivalency at 17. I was married and divorced by 20. And this is all personal. I usually never talk about it, but I think it's nice to hear. I like to hear other people's stories. So bear with me. I attended classes at the School of Visual Arts, Carson School of Design, University Without Walls, and I finally earned a Bachelor of Arts in Studio Arts at Brooklyn College. They had a phenomenal at the time. They had Sylvia Stone, Lee Bonteque, Paul Gianfagna, Leonard Anderson, Philip Perlstein, some amazing people. I was lucky. Anyway, where am I? Oh, yeah. I won a drama award for writing a play that one of my professors handed in. I didn't even know. And the reason I mention this is they gave me money for the prize. And that was a big deal for me at the time. I lived through another breakup of a 4-year relationship, and I ended up getting accepted in the MFA program at Columbia, but I couldn't afford it. So I ended up with a full fellowship instead at Penn State. But I didn't have enough money. I mean, it's the middle of nowhere to me. I thought that there would be coffee shops. There are no coffee shops in the middle of Pennsylvania. Beautiful, but it's very different. So I was the sculpture custodian part-time. I was a teaching assistant part-time. I worked the midnight to 8 shift every Saturday and Sunday for a detective agency switchboard at $2.50 an hour. And I was on food stamps for a year. I drew dissected cadavers, though, at the Hershey Medical College, which was my final semester, and through a Pennsylvania State Arts grant. And I learned about human anatomy. And for the first time, I learned how to drive, because when you're out in the country, you really need to know how to drive a car. It's a big deal. I was at that point 27. So I came back home because my dad was dying of lymph cancer. And I met my life partner and husband, Robert Bell, who's here. There he is. Through the Arts Alive CETA program, which was a wonderful program New York State had in the 70s and early 80s. I took a 1-year position as a gallery manager at the Rothland Center for the Arts in West Nyack, New York, and I learned a great deal about how not to run a gallery, even though, I'm part of that with me. I didn't know anything, and I learned a great deal, so I'm very thankful. What led me to this point? As a professional artist, I've been a member of the Artists Union United Scenic Artists Local 829 for over 35 years, and I'm recently retired. But I made sculpture, I painted backdrops for the Met Opera, feature films, Netflix, Broadway shows, and I taught as an adjunct professor also at 4 different colleges for 30 decades, kind of kept my brain alive. And the exposure to different media and methods beyond my fine arts and commercial arts background became highly useful in my own artwork, but also in teaching students with really diversified backgrounds, skills, and motivations. The piece that I have in this exhibition is called We Are the Sixth Extinction. Some of you may know a book called The Sixth Extinction. Recent, very good book. It refers to the global issues of accelerated climate change caused in part by chemical pollution, rainforest devastation, habitat destruction, the consequent spread of invasive species, and water resource mismanagement on a huge scale, among others. It impacts all life on our beautiful planet Earth. I used a linear chart form with photo collage to show how recent our arrival has been in geologic time. It may be, in fact, up to us if we Homo sapiens as a species stay here. And the piece is in the 3rd gallery. Can't see it from here, but I'll just say afterwards. In the back, it goes from ceiling to the floor, black, and it looks like a kid's project. Very different than most of my work. And having a mother who focused on the environment always, who had a 6-foot poster above her desk at work that said, "Love your mother," under a huge image of the planet Earth spinning in space. Some of you may know that post. Fabulous. It undoubtedly has influenced me. I also was a production designer, a draftswoman, and illustrator for Lamont Doherty Geological Observatory in the early 1980s, where I saw that scientists were beginning to take global warming and climate change very seriously. That was 40 years ago. The title of this exhibition, Evolution Revolution, at Taller Boricua Gallery, curated by Nitza Tufiño and the New York Society of Women Artists, with special thanks to our NYSWA president, Natalia Giugni, and in fact, all of the artists who made this exceptional exhibition possible. It is beautiful. Where am I? It speaks to me as a social justice issue that extends globally to all people and beings on our planet who are now being negatively impacted by our species' short-sighted greed and lack of communal vision. I created the geologic chart. Now you don't know what I'm talking about, so I have to tell you it. It's a geologic chart with lines on it, and I've written the names of all the periods of geologic time with little pictures cut out of National Geographic. And, well, I'll get into this. So, humans have been on this planet for about 2.5 million years. And to put it in perspective, dinosaurs were around for 165 million years. There's been life on Earth for 3.7 billion years, and our planet has been around for maybe 4.7 billion years. So in geologic time, humans have been on the planet for 0.007%. That's the blink of an eye, but we have impacted it extraordinarily. When I created the original wall hanging, I used photo collage, shiny metallic tape, and white oil marker, but it was so fragile, I had to have a print made on banner fabric, and then I added acrylic paint to the print, and I made a hanging system for presentation. I kept thinking that it would be a great poster for schools, or for advertising the need to take human-induced climate change more seriously. Originally, I wanted the rolled up fabric at the base of my piece to open up across the gallery floor to show how much longer a time span on Earth, 88% of geologic time, would look visually, and realized that the fabric would have to unroll on the walls and the floor. I mean, it wouldn't even begin to show what I was trying to show. We're here, everything is see the whole room. Through the years, the themes of my personal artwork have encompassed Zen Buddhist meditation and practice, Shikokai karate, landscape painting, and portraits of people. I make large installation works, usually small models, and utilize many, many materials. As president of another organization, 14 Sculptors, Inc., the artist-run group, which I've been a member for 39 years, we exhibit both large outdoor sculpture as well as showing works in gallery. So I kind of love it all. To finish, my artwork, We Are the Six Extinctions, seems to be an anomaly regarding the major body of my work in style and in content, but it really connects with my belief that we humans need to radically change our group behavior towards the treatment of the environment, or we won't have a livable world left for those who come after us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sienna. I'm going to introduce Fran Beeler now.
Thank you, Natalie. I am just so impressed and inspired by my fellow members who've spoken before me. This is a little bit of a hard act to follow. Each one of you spoke so beautifully, and yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. I want to thank Nitza, thank Natalie. Like Sienna, I am also co-leader of another arts organization called the New York Artists Circle. We're a downtown organization, and actually a number of our members are in the New York Society of Women Artists. Some of them are here. And co-leading that organization for the last 5 or 6 years. I've been a member for maybe 25 years. I know what it takes to run an organization and lead an organization. So I know the kind of work that Nitza and Natalie and everybody else who runs an organization, what it takes to run the organization, to put together a show like this. Putting together the show is one thing, but then advertising and press, you've done such an amazing job. I'm in awe and thrilled to be a part of it. Very honored. So my artwork in the show is also in room number 3, across the wall from Sheila and Patty Corner from Sienna. And my work in the show, like the work of some of my fellow artists, is very personal. Like Sheila is very family driven. It's a portrait of my mother, and I kind of thought I was going to be standing in front of it somehow. I envisioned us walking around, so it's tiny, but this is what it looks like. And so when you go in the other room, so the piece is a little different for me. I started out in my career doing drawing. I love to draw. But I got seduced by painting early on too, and so moved more into painting for many years. But I've found myself heading more and more back in the direction of drawing, and I'll talk about that more. But this piece is really a drawing. It's done on a new medium for me. It's done on Duralar plastic. It's a beautiful medium to work with. It's transparent and translucent, and it's got layers. In fact, the title of the piece is Layers, Farewell, Mother, Warrior. And I started out, the bottom layer of the piece is literally an enlarged photocopy of a black and white photo of my mother that I found after my father died, and I inherited all the family photos. I also inherited all my mother's artwork that had passed many years prior, and she was an artist as well. And in this photo, she's raising her arm as though when I saw it, I got goosebumps, because it was like she was waving to me from beyond. It was also like she was waving farewell. And the more I looked at the picture, the more I thought about this posture. And I started thinking about images I had seen in the Museum of Warriors. And of course, the most famous female warrior is maybe Joan of Arc. And there are so many paintings of her in the Metropolitan Museum and around. And I thought of how, I wish my mother could have been more of a warrior on her own behalf. So when my mother was a young woman, my parents moved to California. It was a big deal in those days. They had grown up in New York, going very far away, and it was in the nascent early days of television. And my mother had a partner that she worked with, educational programs for children, and they designed a TV show. And it was going to be something, I don't know, I think of Shari Lewis and her puppets in, Lamb Chop. In my mother's case, her friend would read stories. They loved the Just So fables and Aesop's fables, and the friend would read the stories, and my mother would have these huge sheets of paper up on the wall, and she would draw and illustrate while the story was being told, and she would end up with these huge long rolls, and every time they would present this show. It was just amazing, and she would come up with this spontaneously. But they had designed a whole TV show format. They had a sponsor. I think it involved puppets as well to some extent. And anyway, my father got a new job in New York, and they just up and left California and left my mother's dreams behind. And this just seems like such a representative story for what so many of us as women have gone through over the ages. We are the invisible support for the male artists and professionals, period, across the board. Where are our voices throughout history? So my mother left and came to New York. Not become a famous TV personality, and her dream of this wonderful show for children didn't happen. But she did come to New York, and she had another partner in New York, and they did perform it in front of many school groups. And she later became a school teacher. When she retired, she went back to her artwork and produced copious amounts of artwork, and then died too young. But so this has such an effect on me as an artist, my desire to be an artist, be out there, to get my work out there. And not only that, but to work in organizations like Society of Women Artists and the New York Artist Circle, to work for women's voices, to get women shown, to get our exhibitions noticed and written about and sent out around the world, So in the drawing, I used layers of this Durlar. And so one layer, the first layer is I've added color to the black and white photo. And then there's another translucent layer over it. So it's like that hazy fog of memory, a little misty. And then the next layer is black and white, and there I've emphasized the things in the drawing about my mother that I wanted to show, her strength and her posture. The little creepy ones, because she's standing ankle deep in water, and it makes you wonder if she's fully dressed. Skirt and a blouse, hair is done, and standing in the water ankle deep, and why had she waded out? Was she hot? Was she calling someone? And then I kept thinking about how someone else was even farther out in the water, taking the picture of her standing in the water. Very interesting. And then on the top layer of the drawing, on this transparent layer of Durlar, is the warrior. And she's drifting off, not quite centered. So as women, we need to embrace our warrior and pull her in and fight, for our vision. But for my mother, it wasn't quite there yet. I want to say too, I as I said, I love painting, but drawing is my first love. And over the years, I've done a lot of self-portraits. Last night, I had a huge opening. So I'm a little bit in an alt state right now. I had a huge opening at another East Harlem wonderful institution called El Barrio's Art Space, PS 109, which is also living and working, and they have a theater and they have galleries. And I am very honored to be showing in their downstairs gallery, and I'm showing a series of 366 self-portraits that I did, one every single day. And I did that in 2020, which, as you all know, was an interesting year. I had already started when the pandemic hit, and then the pandemic hit, and then suddenly I was documenting the pandemic and my life, and it was very intense. And all of those drawings are hanging in the gallery at El Barrio's Art Space at 215 East 99th Street. If any of you would like to go over, it's very close to here to see it. It's up through September. It's open every day of the week. And I plan to be there a lot. Because like this show, I'm just so honored to be able to show in a space that's meaningful. organization that does so much for artists. And one of the things about doing self-portrait, people often ask me, what's the deal? Because this is actually the 4th year that I've done a self-portrait a day. I did it the first time in 1980 in a notebook when I was in my 20s, thinking, I'm just gonna, I'm an artist. I shouldn't write my feelings. I should draw them. And so I did that. And then in the year 2000, I had young kids. I needed to get back into my studio. And I thought, what can I do? Well, go to the project and do a self-portrait a day again. Did it 2010, I did it again. And now in 2020, I'm already starting to think about 30. The amazing part of doing a huge project like that is just that you think about it and you plan it, but then to get to see it laid out on the walls, because I had never seen it fall up until it was hanging. And any of you who are artists who know how hard it is just to hang one piece of art, imagine hanging over 500 in a gallery, because that's what I did over the last week. 12-hour days. My husband is amazing, my helpmate, and he was there with me, and I had a group of friends and helpers. But what it is about self-portraits, why all these self-portraits in this big old gallery? Growing up, I felt a little bit invisible as a woman. I felt like my voice wasn't heard. And it wasn't just me, it was the voices of all women. My mother's voice, my sister's voice, my friends, people in history, where were the women? I felt, and so I think doing this self-portraiture has been a way of not only finding myself, but finding the strength of women. Another reason that I'm so proud and honored to be a member of the Society of Women Artists. I mean, our organization is coming on 100 years. It's spectacular, and we are still a force to be reckoned with. Evolution, revolution, really says it all. And as you said, Natalie, now more than ever with growth, where are we going? We've got to move forward. We've got to keep fighting for what we believe and for our rights. So I am thrilled to have been in this show, to be in this show. Sorry, be a member of this great organization, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about my work.
Thank you. And our last speaker of the day will be Ellen Alt, and then we're going to open it up for a few minutes to questions.
Hi, everybody. So, I am one of the few people who has a piece in this very room, and I will point it out to you in a minute. I wanted to talk, people have raised all kinds of current issues going on, and they're all pretty heavy. And I'm not different. One of the things artists do is say, look what's going on around you, let's pay attention. They draw your attention to something. And I'm going to talk about evolution in terms of an artistic idea, because in 2006, and I'm sure many of you saw this movie, The Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore was telling us exactly what we now know. And the idea just resonated, it just goes into your head when you see something and you go, oh, I don't want to know that. But you can't help it. And it just went in my head, and I thought, no, let's ignore that for 100 years like everyone else. And then I saw a documentary in 2012 called Chasing Ice. And this was by James Baylog. And it was just a movie where he set up cameras in the Arctic. And you saw what happened over 5 years. And that was in 2011. So you can just imagine the drama. But what I saw in the movie was just how beautiful the destruction was, which is crazy. Destruction's supposed to be pretty ugly, and this was not. The ice melting is a beautiful natural process. We're accelerating it, but it's beautiful to watch. And that sent me down the road of 8 years working on melting ice. in a million different ways. I'm a mixed media artist. So it was an experiment in science in my studio, and what melting ice looks like. Then the ice in the last series I did melted completely, and I thought, oh, I'm done with that idea. And then, like many artists, I didn't have the next one ready to go. And I spent a number of years just going to the studio and fooling around and hoping something else would be as riveting. And during the pandemic, I said, listen, what do you really want to do? And I said, I just want to draw shapes and fill them in with color, like paint by number that I'll make myself. It'll be calming. It'll be just what I want to do. I'll take control of a shape and fill it with color. And so I did that a couple times. And then I was looking for more shapes and more colors. And I ran across the idea of test patterns, TV test patterns. So I'd want you to turn around, look at that piece with the glitter. That is a TV test pattern, and that's what I'm working on now. There's two things about TV test pattern. One, I don't know if you remember, older people like me or older will remember, but TV wasn't always on with shows, but it was always on. And when it was on, it was a TV test pattern. And when I was little, I was the only one up, and I'd go downstairs, terrified. And I'd turn on the TV because it was before Felix the Cat came on. And it was a TV test pattern. I was prepared, but every time I ran out of the room after I turned on the TV because it had that noise. And that's not good for a kid. So that was my first introduction to TV test patterns. Now I see that they're every country, everyone has them, they're still being used to test cameras, they're beautiful. But what they are to me is a metaphor for us. We're the test, we're in the planet, hope we make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. So I'm going to ask the speakers to maybe pull up a couple more chairs, and we'll open it up to questions to them. Yeah, everybody in the front, because people can say, the woman over there. So, I'll sit next to Nitza. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Try that one out.
Hello? Yep, it's working. Thanks. Okay, are there any questions out there for any of our artists?
Did you all hear me? Got me standing. Oh, Google. Okay. To watch the evolution. Structure of text.
A question of our artists, or please.
Oh,
First, I'd like to start out with a personal view from what I've seen here and been many years in this field, is that all of you have shown incredible dedication, incredible perseverance, and have basically created incredible works of art under not the best of circumstances. So for that, I think you should all get a big round of applause. Second of all, just a general question, you can answer it as you wish. Now that you have this perspective of decades of work, etc., what do you feel about the next generation that's coming after you? But even more important, I've noticed a lack of basically anger. I know there's probably some, but I don't see it as a predominant theme here. And I want to know how you're able to keep yourself going through all of this adversity. Thank you.
Who would like to?
Just going to jump in with, I think we're going to be getting more angry. I think the overturning of Roe versus Wade hadn't happened before this show went up. I think if it had happened before the show went up, it would have been different. It might have been different. And I just think that it's a line that's crossed that people who thought maybe we'll just relax and let the next generation take it are not sure that that's the best way to go.
So, one of the things this made me think of, after my opening last night, a friend sent me an article, and the title of the article is "The Staggering Lack of Female Artists in America's Museums." So women are the majority of artists. Well, they're more than 50% of the artists working today, and we are a huge amount of the artists in art school. And that's like an overwhelming thought, because what are those artists going to do when they get out of school, you know? So, like, what are we doing? And I think that's why exhibitions like this are so important, and why we have to work so hard. We have to create our own museum exhibitions, and that's really what this show is. It is a beautiful museum quality exhibition. My solo show at Elvira's Art Space is also exhibition quality. You know, we have to work 10 times as hard. You know, when you show in a museum, you get all that financial support. They hang the show for you. They do everything. But, you know, Natalie had to do so much. We all had to do so much to promote the show and to get the word out. And that is really important. We have to keep doing that. We just have to keep fighting on our own behalf. You know, sometimes it feels selfish. I'm trying to, promote my show, trying to promote our show. But that's what we have to do, and I think people appreciate it. People want to hear women's voices. Women's voices are important. So we just have to keep fighting the fight. I am very...
Well, I was going to say something, and I think we need to mentor young women artists, and we have to change a lot of things in society that has to do with women in terms, because the women get married, and then they have the children, and it's sort of like we're still back in the same ideology that the men work. Sometimes the woman works also, but then the woman works, she comes home, she deals with the children, and she has to deal with the house. So she always is, the tendency is that she doesn't have the energy to go or have a space to do the artwork. So it's always like you're behind and you're the last one in the family, you know what I mean? It doesn't take a precedent. And I think that philosophy within a family, especially with artists, has to change, because the woman needs support from the husband for her to do her artwork, So it's the same generational when your parents, because the same thing happened with my mother when I was growing up, and she gave up her career. And I think that's, even though a lot of things have changed, I don't think they have changed that much. And then in terms of foundations, and talking about issues and stuff like that. They never come out with women artists that have children and how it is it that they deal with their situation. You know what I mean? That's an issue with also the funding sources. You know what I mean? The funding sources and how they give money. A lot of males, sure, the male, somehow it's cultural, it's in terms of the society, because the woman, they go in and they get married, they nurture the man, they want the men to get ahead. They help them, if they have to go to the studio. I mean, I have seen that through all my life. You know what I mean? So it is difficult. That mentality has to change. How we change it, mentorship with young women artists, forcing foundations to open up more, to give money to women that have children, special fellowships for women or artists and have children. That's an issue that needs to be discussed. Having space for women artists, materials, stuff like that. You know what I mean? But how to support themselves and for the men within their situation, father, mother, whatever. That the male mentality has to change.
Actually, I'll go from there.
Sorry.
This one? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to answer that question too, actually. It's, sorry, but I am. I'm not as angry as I was when I was in my 20s, but I certainly still am and feel that as a professor for many years working with young people who certainly expressed their frustration with the fact that, how do I make a living? And, what do you tell them? Here's a statistic for you. 5 years after getting a graduate degree, both men and women in the arts give up. Unless they can find a way to channel what they do as a living wage, or they have money, or they marry somebody with a lot of money. But usually this doesn't happen. And I have to say, I totally agree with what you had to say. I have 3 sons, but my husband's been very supportive. However, I have to say that with my mom, I look at her generation, I've heard it now from everybody almost, that was worse. But still, as artists, it's not all that great. A lot needs to change. Oh, sorry.
Hi. I worry about the object disappearing, the art object. I worry about the internet. I worry about social media. We're in a gallery. I mean, we're in an art center now, and we're talking to actual people, human beings, and we're looking at actual paintings and sculptures and installations. I worry about that. In the 80s it was called new media, and now it's digital art, and now I don't know what it's called. But there's a collaborative called Bleak, where it only exists, the art, on the internet, and it can only be bought and sold with cryptocurrency. Ooh. And the only group I can think of is Bleak, and that's what I worry about. And I like to go to museums to look at art. I like to read books, that's just me, that I can hold in my hand and take with me. And then my work is about activism. And I don't get depressed, I get anxious, but I don't get depressed. But like the whole Me Too, that we had to have a Me Too movement, that we had to have a BLM movement in the 21st century, when we were doing this in the 60s and the 70s. And I think that's tied in again with the internet and social media, and I worry about children being able to tell the difference between what they're looking at is real and not real, and AI intelligence and images, even on television, and social media that's been reworked. And I worry about the object just disappearing, and artists, art making, in a studio, going away. And even at the college I used to teach at, I'm recently retired, the studio art program shrank after I left. It shrank, and so did the art history program, shrank. But of course computer science keeps moving along. So, like I said about my work, which is about, at a personal level, about my granddaughter, but also, activism and, are we evolving or are we devolving? And Roe versus Wade, just like, what? And now what? I don't believe the church or the state should tell us what to do in the privacy of our own homes and with our own bodies.
Amen.
Period.
I'd like to add something.
On a further note, sort of in that direction. Is this thing? There we go. I teach drawing in the university. I don't teach painters, I teach theater people, designers. And I can't do everything for human life. I can't. I decided not to have children so I could paint, and because of other reasons, personal reasons I won't go into. But I decided I couldn't do everything. And in terms of what I can offer human civilization and human life, it's very limited. What I can help people do is to see. Now, if I can help people to see, that sounds kind of vague and maybe not very radical, but I think it's the most radical thing I can do. Because it's what I have, and because I hold it radically. I want the human person, animal, to be capable of having its own instinct and acting on it and being receptive to experience. If I produce an artwork and I want people to look at it, I would hope that they'd be capable of having aesthetic experience. I would hope they go through life being in awe of things they see and being capable of being in awe of things they see so that they are alive to visual experience and able to interpret that in terms of their own life experience and maybe be able to communicate it with the guy next to them or whatever, So I kind of live in a state of awe, and I try to communicate that to my students. And it's experimental, and it takes them off guard because they expect some kind of mechanical course of drawing. They expect to be given some kinds of formulas and things, and no, I set them up so that they have an experience in the time of the class. And so that's what I do, and it's not exactly political, but it's radical, and it's not, I don't look at the world in the way my fellow artists are talking about it, because I know I don't have an awful lot that I can offer in that area. I haven't chosen to specialize there, and my life has become incredibly specialized towards maintaining and receiving the craft of civilization. So that's it for me. Thank you.
So whereas Geraldine teaches people how to see, and Sheila is concerned with the object disappearing, I'm concerned with the truth disappearing. Like, we're not a political organization, but by nature, because we are women, we're very political. And I must say that although Roe versus Wade wasn't overturned yet, I saw it coming around the corner, hence the name of the show, which was already in the works. And just with the objects, to go back about objects disappearing, we have truth disappearing. We are fighting for schools to teach actual history now, and that's a real concern. So when we as women artists have the opportunity to show our works in a public space where There is no entry fee. It's open to the public and open to, people of all walks of lives. Our works foster a discussion that, people can't, these pieces will, hits them in the face with some kind of truth. We're in a time where everybody can kind of live within their own silos. It used to be like if you're on a subway train and somebody walked through, everybody was seeing that one instance of reality. Now everybody's in their own world with their earbuds and their phones. You can choose where you want to be. So this show, our works confront people. That's all I wanted to say about that.
I'm just going to say that we have learned about other histories through art. If the Egyptians, the Mexicans, the Greek, all these people have not done some kind of art, we wouldn't know anything about what happened in terms of civilization. So actually by having this show and being here and us talking and using the new medias, that's what's going to happen, evolution, revolution, is the fact to continue on being fighting. We are making history. So we're not stopping, and we are still going to say what we need to say, and we're going to still fight. And if we get older, then we're going to get young people, we're going to mentor, we're going to do whatever we have to do. But the artwork continues. It doesn't get stagnated. It is what it is. It was created at one moment to be a stamp in history at that time, at that hour, whatever the artist was thinking, whatever the artist, his spirit was coming out. So I still have a lot of faith that we shall continue and we will continue doing these things. Even at Taller, we are committed. Marcos and myself and the board and the other artists that are here, the collective, to continue and for all these ideas to come out and for us to have more discussion and bring more young people into the mix to hear what is it that they have to say, because they are very much influenced by computer, Facebook, Instagram, a lot of other mediums. So it's more, we're more in humanity, and the globe keeps growing. We're going to keep on growing in terms of population and this and the other. But when you make a piece of art, or you write a poem, or you do whatever, and you call it, this is you're making history. And that's the important part. We're not going to forget that. And New York State Women Artists is a magnificent organization. We need somehow to bring someone committed to help you and be with you guys to see if we can get some young people, young artists. And for me, when I'm with young people, I see what they do, and then I can influence them. They influence me, and it makes it kind of exciting. It's how you feel alive. There's something about them, they make you feel alive. That's all I have to say.
Does anyone else have a question? Ronnie?
Yeah, just one.
Okay, I'll bring you the mic. Go up, please.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. I just have a lot of comments about what was already said, and I think that at the beginning, one of the questions that Nitza asked was, is art eternal? And I think Geraldine's piece, the name of it, it's called, what is the name of your piece?
Till the end of time.
Till the end of time, it is. Well, and will time ever end? And I think that definitely the comment about how do you make a living, that's a concern, and even for those of you who have been teaching and the youth, we think about the youth. I say I was Sam McGroovy's senior, going on 70, but they think about that, and right now what I'd like to ask, particularly those who are teaching or are teaching young artists, do you find that the young artists are perhaps a tad arrogant in trying to find a gimmick in order to sell their art, number one? And another question, I want to ask about the Holocaust. Your program that you said you were involved
Project.
with. Yeah, the project. Where it's amazing that there are human beings who question that a Holocaust existed.
Yep.
And to this day, and even, you know, the term never again, you know, we have to remember, you know, it can happen again. I mean, we never thought that we'd see Roe versus Wade and look at what's happening. So it's two questions, the arrogance and the gimmick. And then I'd like to know about your feelings about the project and what's going on with the Holocaust and now the rise of Semitism. You know, where I even read something earlier, and I'm going to contact the Chancellor's office, Giugni, that something is going on and the Chancellor's not doing anything about it. Thank you.
I bring it. Okay. Thanks. So Sheila, I'll leave this to you.
Yeah, it's very, very disturbing. Anti-Semitism and because the not just anti-Semitism, but you know, just anti anybody who isn't, and I hate to say it, the other. I mean, even you know, whites on white. I mean, the conservative right. You know, there was an insurrection at the, you know, on the White House, and Asian women being, you know, pushed into the subway tracks and slashed across the face with knives by young people. You can't even tell the difference between Chinese, Japanese, Korean, you know, Filipino. So, but the Holocaust Project was over in '97. It began in '92. We went to Germany to do roots work on my husband's father, and when we were in Munich, we saw the sign, Dachau, you know, and I didn't want to go. I said, you know, but we went, and I was overwhelmed, and I came home and interrupted at the time I had gallery representation in Soho, but I interrupted a series just to exorcise, you know, and then the horror from me, the artist, and started in '92, and it wasn't over till '97, and I'm happy to say that it was exhibited in bits and pieces all over the country, and including in Honolulu and on Maui, because the beginning of the project, I have to believe myself that the defining issue has to be, you know, the deliberate attempt to exterminate a whole race, you know, the final solution. But the project began with the Jews, and then I moved to the Roma and the Jehovah's Witnesses, and then I moved, you know, to the other groups, including the women and the children, kinder sport and kinder transport and the hidden children. And it began with the prisoners who were killed, and then the survivors, and then the rescuers and the liberators, the Americans of Japanese ancestry from Honolulu who fought in the 442-100, the most highly decorated military unit in the history of U.S. military history. So, but I was very honored to be invited to have a show at the Klutznick National Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. I am not Jewish. My last name is Jewish. My husband's father was a German Jew. So this is kind of all a part of it. We're all human beings, right? We're all human beings. You know, our blood is the same color. It's red, and and it wasn't until as recently as 2018 in a show commemorating the Holocaust at the college that I taught at. April was a big deal, and the whole college. Because I own a college in New Rochelle. They have a world-renowned Catholic Jewish Studies program, and so as recently as 2018, in the fall, and then I left in the spring. The work was still being exhibited. So, but that project is over. But it doesn't make any sense to me. It's horrific. We're, like I said, are we evolving or devolving?
Oh. And then Geraldine after you.
I just want to respond to what I've been hearing and the themes that were.
Yeah, just pointing.
Thank you. Pointed, okay. And the themes that everybody touched upon. For one, I think all of us, sort of to echo Geraldine, are involved in a certain kind of contemplation in making art. And it's personally our time to be with ourselves and to be visual and to react to the world. But it's a very visual thing, and the actual making of the art is not done in anger unless maybe there was a period in abstract expressionism that was angry, but I think it was also contemplative. So I think that was an interesting point that was made. And also, this is called evolution revolution. And what Fran had pointed out about women and women's roles in family, this has been something that has been discussed. In those days, there were women's clubs and women's art clubs. And the United States, there were women's art clubs since after the Civil War, where again, the people, I think there were 60% or 80% of women in art schools at that time. And women would discuss how art and marriage go together. Mm-hmm. So, it's not that new.
Right.
And human cruelty is not that new either. So I think there's a little bit of respite from that in just making art and being visual. And some people's art is political, and some people's lives are political, and some people's lives are political because they're making art. But I just wanted to say those themes resonated with me, and I thought it was great. I thought everybody did a great job.
Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome.
Diana was the very last president of the New York Society of Women Artists, by the way, and she's quite knowledgeable.
Thank you.
Oh, Gerald. Oh, sure.
The greatest gift I received from the art world has been to be ignored. It has been a mixed feeling because I didn't want to be ignored, of course. As a young artist, I certainly wanted to craft something I could craft at that early date, but let's face it, I am not someone who was living in art as a child. I was not ready to craft something by the time I was 20 years old that had much depth. And I'm the child of a steel worker and a housewife. So we didn't have art in the house, we didn't have music in the house, so, we just had food and we were able to take care of our living. So everything I've learned about being an artist, I've learned since then, and it's taken the time it's taken. And in terms of having an early career, I did have a little early flush of self-importance and contact with galleries, and it didn't go very far. But now, in retrospect, what I see is that the art market is pretty flaky, and who cares? On some level, who really cares? What I want to do is make great art, and this art world in a democracy is not about great art. So, who cares? Yes, I have students who are hoping all the things I hoped in my youth, all the things that youth always hopes, and instead they will do as I did to whatever degree they do, and what Sienna did, what I heard Sienna did, kind of craft a life in art that is very little bits of this and that, and gradual, and not pretty, and not what you'd hoped when you were young. So I have a hard time thinking of anything I would tell the youth except learn to see and be dedicated to that, and try to love your craft and see what in history has supported you and will continue to support you. So that's my message, I guess.
So thank you. This has been a great discussion. I hope we can continue doing the work. We will agree together on these passages of our lives. And like they say, art, I mean, if you become an artist and you like making art, if you need to eat, you need to make art. Otherwise you die. It's not like you don't retire. This is art. So until the day I die, I will be making art. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. This has been a wonderful event. I want to mention that we are also honoring Dr. Evelina Antonetti. She was a leader in the social movement, and she was called the Hell Lady of the Bronx. But she was an advocate of bilingual education 20, 30 years ago. And we are honoring her beginning at Oslos College on September 12th. And on the 19th, we're going to have an event here in this gallery. Nitza did one of the portraits, and I did other portraits that are going to be featured in this exhibition. So anyway, I just want to be, after that we have an exhibition of Cuban printmakers that opens in October 14.
These are the printmaking in technical experiment, graphical, from Cuba. And then some other printmakers that are scattered, like in Luxembourg, Spain, France, Belgium. So we have called them out. So we're going to get everybody together. It's 64 artists. So we're going to have a discussion about printmaking and where are the Cubans.
Workshops.
And, workshops and stuff. But we might be giving some workshops in our space too.
So keep in tune. Check out our website. I also want to thank Willie Correa and the New Muse Gallery that produces all our online work, and he produced this recording today, and that will be on our website also. Okay, so thank you very much all for coming. Become part of the family.
Yeah, you're all part of the family.
Family. Oh, it's more. And we couldn't have one more
think of confirmation is going to be a good start to Carolyn is in our, she's the chair of our, so I'm gonna make sure that she and I work on this. It's a good idea. Yeah. My family's growing up. Yeah.